I was very fortunate and very blessed to grow up in a Christian home, and I'm happy to say that I was saved before I was a teenager. As I thought about sharing my testimony, I settled on the fact that my Jesus story has more to do with what Jesus has done for me and how he has grown my faith through the years, and how he has allowed all of these things to happen to me for my good and not to harm me and not to harm those around me and those that I love the most. A lot of things deserve to be shared. And in the original taping of my Jesus story, I talked quite a bit and shared quite a bit more. For those of you that know me, you know that I talk a lot, so it's probably no surprise that I talked on and on and on, and it went far too long. So for the sake of time, I chose to share some very significant things that God has done for me and those that I love in the last 5 to 6 years. My prayer truly is that something that you hear in my Jesus story, that we're going to switch to in just a minute from my original taping, will speak to you in some area of your life. The story, as we decided to pick it up, the story picks up when I was recently divorced and trying to deal with sharing my one and only daughter, Hallie, with her dad. I was incredibly angry and very hard-hardened about the lifestyle that he was living, the things that I felt that he was probably doing. And not that I was all that concerned about him, obviously, because I was very angry at him, but frankly because of the things that I felt he was exposing my daughter to. So that's where my Jesus story picks up. And while, Hallie was in middle school at the time, like around 7th grade, and Billy had sort of a series of girlfriends and like live-in girlfriends, and I was very, very angry about his behavior and the things that he was doing, and frankly, the women that he was exposing Hallie to. These were not women, these were not females that I would have to be a role model for her. And so one in particular time, my anger was out of control, and I was really angry at him and all the stuff he was doing and not doing for Hallie or me or whatever. And he started dating this lady, and Hallie really wanted to spend time with him and really wanted to live with him. And I didn't want that to happen. Thought it was a really bad idea. And one, in terms of my anger, like, for example, I was really driving Hallie away from me. Like, she would do poorly in school on something, and I would say, well, you got that from your dad, from his DNA, not mine. And of course, that drove her further away. It was completely my fault. I own up to that. And so she was she was a tween at the time. She was like 12 or 13, and so really nothing was really going well with her and me in terms of our relationship. And so ultimately one Sunday afternoon, we had an argument of some sort, and she said, I want to go live with my dad, and long story short, I told her to go. And so she went. And as soon as she went, I knew I'd made a mistake. I knew that I had let my anger overcome me, and I cried and cried and cried. She was gone for 12 weeks, nearly 12 weeks. It was about spring break at that time, so it was mid to end of March. And all of my attempts to get in touch with her, to talk to her, to text her, to call her, were pretty much just not received by her. She was very angry at me. And the woman that he was living with was a terrible influence. I found out that she probably had a prescription pill problem, that she did not have custody of her own children, that she had spent time in jail for DUIs. I found out she was driving Hallie around and didn't have a driver's license. And I had all these fears about what was going on over there at that house, because she wasn't really coming home on the weekends to see me, nor was she talking to me. I had fear that she wasn't doing well in school, that she wasn't doing her homework, that she wasn't eating well, that they weren't taking care of her. And every time I went over to drop stuff off to her, the house would smell like smoke, and the whole thing was just horrible. And I prayed and I wept, and I read a lot of Psalms. At that time, I cried myself to sleep many, many nights. And my sweet husband, John, consoled me. And I prayed for a miracle. And one day, out of the blue, Billy called me and said, I need to break up with this woman. I can't get her to move out of the house. She won't leave.
So I'm going to have to move out of state to get rid of her. Talk about a miracle that, God delivered that is inexplicable. So not only did she come home and spend the rest of the summer with me, and she spent basically the rest of, the 8th grade year with me, he moved out of state. And that was the best thing that could have happened, the best outcome that I could have asked for, because he was still kind of in a bad place. And in obedience, I asked forgiveness for my divorce. I asked forgiveness for all of the things that I did in the marriage that probably drove him away. Because trust me, I was no picnic. I forgave him. I told God I forgave him for all the crazy stuff that he did. And I felt led to pray for him. And so I did. I was prayer journaling at the time. And I remember asking God to help him. I know that I will tell you, the first time I prayed for him, I was convicted that I needed to pray for him like the people that I loved the most, which were Hallie and John and my mother and all, my immediate family. They're the people I loved the most. And I was convicted that I wasn't willing to pray for him the same way, and he was my daughter's father. And so I did. And I got to tell you, the words did not come easy. I basically forced myself to do it, but I prayed for him. And I got to tell you, as soon as I finished that prayer, it was like this huge, massive burden just like came off my shoulders, and I was completely at peace. And, I used to say I could write a book about all the crazy stuff that our marriage and our separation and our divorce and all the crazy stuff that happened. But fortunately, God has given me a really terrible memory, and I'm glad. I forget all kind of stuff, but fortunately, the details of our marriage and all the crazy stuff that happened are very vague. I still make a joke that I could write a book, but honestly, I don't think I could, because I can't remember a lot of the stuff that happened, and I'm so grateful for that. That burden and that craziness has just been lifted off of me. So the last major trial that I've had in my life is work-related. And to understand my work trials, you have to understand a little bit about me. Since the time that I was a little kid in elementary school, I have never, I've been a straight A student. I graduated top 2 in my high school class. I don't even remember ever really making but 1 B in my whole high school career, and that shattered me, really. I went to college. College was difficult, but not really that difficult. I got a job right out of college, the company I'm still with. And I've been promoted 3 times when I'm at work. So basically, I have never really failed academically or professionally, ever. And any goal that was set for me at work, any kind of metric that was set for me at work, I basically shattered that. At the time, there were 40 or 42 of us on the same line, and I was always the top 5, sometimes the top 2, even a couple times number 1. And so I had been promoted a few times, and this last promotion, I thought it would be the same as everything else. It really wouldn't, be a major, it wouldn't be really hard. And so I did. I took this last promotion, and basically I'm a VP of operations, and I oversee, at the time, 9 or 10 nursing homes in North Carolina. And I remember the harder I worked, it was like, the more bad outcomes we had. I wasn't happy with the care that we provided. I wasn't happy with the reputations that we had in the communities that we served. I wasn't happy that we seemed to always upset the hospitals and the case managers, who were our primary source of business. And all of that basically led to these horrible financial results that I had never experienced professionally. And I was not meeting any of the metrics. Our turnover was going up, and the finances were out of control. Needless to say, there were 4 of us on the same line, and all the guys that I work with, they were shattering their goals, and they were doing fine. And I have to tell you that I was wrecked. I was so upset. I cried and carried on because I couldn't get it right. And the fear, and actually I was just seething with jealousy also, that these guys were doing well, and I knew I was working as hard or harder than them, and I could not get it right. And so, and ultimately all of that sort of culminated into me because my boss had actually said it. I had this fear that I was going to lose my job, and I've never failed at anything, really, professionally, as I've told you before. And so fear of failure had just crept in. It had just made me this very difficult person. So at the time, I was in on the worship team. And I remember at the time, it was just really Coy and I love to sing. And I was learning the music Sunday to Sunday because I really didn't know the contemporary Christian music that we were singing. So I was learning the music Sunday to Sunday, and I was also at the same time beginning to look for music that I would want to sing. And again, I was having this major work trial. And I came across this song by Kristen DeMarco called Fear Not. And the words of the song really spoke to me, and it brought me back to what God told me many, many years ago, to fear Him and not fear man. And the chorus is, fear not, if I could say it any louder, I would. Fear not, if I could say it any louder, I would. Fear not, if I could shout it any louder, I would. And I just felt God telling me, Sabrina, get it together. Stop fearing this stuff and put your trust in me. And I remember there were so many days that I was driving to work to see my boss, and I would literally hit that song on repeat and just listen to it over and over and over and over and over again. Between the music that I was singing that gave me a melody in my heart, and between this Bible study about what God says I can do if I put my trust in Him, I have to tell you, man, I was in the depths at work. I really thought I was going to lose my job. My husband will tell you I was crying and carrying on about it all the time. I had this terrible team of people that was working for me. It was just a big mess. And God started working this miracle like you would not believe. You would not believe it. I've tried to tell people and they don't believe it. That was about mid-2019, so last year. And it was 6 months in. We were behind plan financially. We had messed up a bunch of stuff we were supposed to be doing as far as our metrics. And it was like, I started prayer journaling about the people that worked for me and how I could help them, coach them on certain things and work them through to their own solutions. I used my own testimonies of the things that I'd overcome to help them with things. So I was able to share what Jesus had done for me at work. I prayed for people above me. There's like 2 guys above me, my boss and my boss's boss. I began to pray for them and prayer journal about how I could share what Jesus had done for me in a work fashion. And I remember praying for the decisions that they made. I remember there were some people in North Carolina that were kind of like the regulatory body that were giving us, not me specifically, but like our team a really hard time. I began to pray for them and the decisions that they were making, and that they would show mercy upon us. I prayed for our patients. At the time, there were like 900 patients ultimately under me. There are like eight or nine people that report to me directly, but there's like 800 or 900 patients, 1,200 staff. I just started prayer journaling and praying for all these people that I felt like I could really have an impact for God on through the way that I worked and the things that I did and the decisions that I made. And God began to show up in ways that you wouldn't believe. So that was 6 months in 2019. By the end of 2019, we had shattered all the metrics that were set for me. My boss was in a really good mood. And I had the best evaluation I've ever had in the 20 years I've been with the company. So in the end, for those of you that don't know, I stand up on Sunday mornings and I sing on this stage right over here to my right, and I sing loud. Sometimes I raise my hands. Sometimes I get a little loud. And I'm going to encourage you to do the same thing. The reason that I do that is because God has shown me so much mercy and so much grace from the time I was a little kid till now. And I know that my trials are not over. I know that God, as He loves us, will continue to prune us, and that there will be some other things that happen in my life that will challenge me. But as long as I know that God is doing that for my good and His ultimate glory, then I'm okay with that. Thanks for listening to my Jesus story.